Oh boy. I know that was a long section, and a long section without that much code. I know you want to do exercises and get things going, and I promise you, with the upcoming sections, we're going to do more and more coding. But I wanted for us to build this foundation so that we understand how the language works internally. In this section, we learned about the JavaScript engine, how we can send a JavaScript file, and it runs it all through these steps, including an interpreter and a compiler, a JIT compiler, to send us optimized code that we can run on our machines. And then we also learned about these two very important concepts that we're going to take with us throughout the rest of the section: call stack and memory heap, and how these are used to run and execute our code. And more importantly, we focused on the call stack, something that we're going to see over and over throughout the next couple of videos and sections, where we use the stack to keep track of where we are in our program. And this concept is going to be very important when we start to understand JavaScript deeply. We also learn about the idea of a single-threaded model. That is, JavaScript is a single-threaded language. One call stack, one memory heap. We learned about the limitations of that, but also the beauty and simplicity, because we can use the JavaScript runtime to have threads in the background that run it for us, whether it is on the browser or outside of the browser using something like Node.js. And we also learned about a very common interview question, where we would do something like this, and the interviewer asks you, hey, what do you think is going to happen here? And we should know by now why this is, why 3 is printed before 1 and 2. So this is your final test to finish off this section. What happens if I run this again, but this time I'm going to run this in 1 second, and this one in just 10 milliseconds. All right, you ready? Let's see. Okay, is that what you expected? Did you get that right? Good. If you did, move on to the next section. But I have one last question for you. And this is going to be a little tough. So let's change this back to 0. And this over here, we're going to change it instead to a promise.resolve. And it's just going to resolve to hi. And we're just going to .then console log 2. And by the way, if you're not used to promises, I've added some videos on promises in the appendix, so you can go check those out. This is something that we're going to learn later on in the course. What do you think is going to happen here? We have a set timeout, then a promise that resolves right away, and console logs 2, and then console log 3. Take your guess, wait a second, because I'm going to press enter, and let's see what happens. Is that what you expected? 3 as a crowd makes sense, but why did 2 get printed before 1? Does that make sense to you? Because based on what I just taught you, it doesn't, right? How did promise get in before 1 is the loneliest number? Well, in order for us to understand that and to leave you on a cliffhanger, this is something we're going to tackle in the asynchronous part of the course. But the thing is, before we get to that, we have to really understand some of the more fundamental concepts of JavaScript. I know I'm keeping you in a suspense. You can jump to the asynchronous part of this course if you're really curious. But I suggest that you wait so that we learn about the core JavaScript concepts before we see what's happening here. For now, take a break, and I hope to see you in the next section. Bye-bye.